Hello everyone, and welcome to Deep Dive World at War, a series where we will cover a vast range of topics from cut game modes, weapons, and more from Call of Duty World at War. Today's episode will be about cut campaign missions. There were a total of 15 total missions, with 8 of them being from the perspective of a US Marine, and the remaining 7 having the player take on the role of a Soviet soldier. However, there were plans for up to 11 more campaign levels, including a British campaign. The first of these missions is a training mission similar to other games in the series. This mission would have you playing as a US Marine, where a drill sergeant would send you and fellow Marines through an obstacle course and gun course in an unknown military base. Here the player would be taught the controls of the game. We can see through early screenshots how the basic layout was, and the files in-game show how it would go. Other than that, there's a few audio files, but they aren't anything substantial. The player would begin the mission riding in an LVT with several other Marines until you arrived at the site. Once you arrived, a drill sergeant would force you to run a track where you'd learn the game's movement controls. After this, you would be taken to a shooting range where you would fire upon 3 targets at close, medium, and long range, as well as several inside of towers. Once completed, you would be sent to a timed obstacle course, similar to COD 4. The second mission, called Prologue, would again be set in a Pacific theater where you'd play as a US Marine, although this time in a combat setting sometime early in the war. The developers wrote a synopsis of what they wanted to happen in the GSC file of the mission, which reads, Officer gives the player background and mood setting, i.e., lets the player know they are low on ammo and they are awaiting reinforcements. There is noise and a scout goes out to investigate. A thump is heard. The officer whispers the scout's name several times and a flare is set up. The first wave of Japanese troops are revealed. There is a moment of surprise where the Americans do some damage to the Japanese. Casualties occur on both sides. When the Japanese ranks have been thinned a bit, a second and third wave comes in, led by 2 officers with katanas. The player either runs out of ammunition or a timer runs out and he is warned of someone behind him. Either we take the camera and jerk it to look at the attacker, or we see the blade and spray of blood, as the player is decapitated from behind. The camera then rolls and settles, showing the officer turning to look at approaching figures in the darkness. Fade to black. Next up is a mission called Fly, not to be confused with Black Hats, whose internal name is PBY_Fly. This mission would have the player operating a Corsair fighter bomber, following a set of objectives on Peleliu Island. These include scouting part of the island, supporting soldiers on the ground, destroying a Japanese convoy, having a dogfight with Japanese planes, and ending with attacking Japanese positions on a ridgeline. The GSC fully states, Event 1, Scout the South. IGC, plane is started and takes off, points the player in the right direction. Objectives are breadcrumbs to fly over different locations. This gives the player time to learn the controls. The plane flies over the taken beach. Lots of landing craft landing and squads setting up. Player sees battleships in the distance. TOO, a Japanese seaplane is scouting in this area. If seen and taken out, there will be less enemy planes in Event 3. Event 2, Support the ground troops. Player is joined by other Corsairs. Red smoke is seen in the distance, marking targets for the planes. Player has to fly over and destroy the camps/bunkers with machine guns and/or rockets. Some camps are supported by AA, mounted machine guns, and Japanese soldiers. Ambient battles are taking place. Allied soldiers are shooting into the camps from the outside, safe from the player's fire. Event 3, Dogfighting. The player is briefed that Japanese fighters are incoming. Player and his allied planes must shoot down a number of Japanese fighter planes. The amount of planes here is determined by whether the player destroyed the Japanese scout plane in Event 1 or not. Event 4. Refuel and Restock. The player must fly back to the airfield and fly directly over the airfield, in which the IGC takes over. IGC shows the plane being refueled and restocked with napalm. Then the plane takes off, turns right, and faces the player in the right direction for when the controls are returned. Event 5. Clean out Bloody Nose Ridge. Metal doors open all over the ridge and guns are rolled out. Guns start shooting at the player. If the player follows the road to the north of the ridge, a light convoy of jeeps and trucks will be available to shoot. If taken out, this stops a radio warning to the enemy unless enemy planes are deployed. Japanese planes attack from a distance to defend the ridge. Players must take out all the planes and destroy all the guns on the ridge. After things are clear, the player is instructed to drop napalm on the ridge. Flying over the ridge and dropping napalm anywhere on it will initiate the end IGC. IGC. Napalm covers the ridge as Japanese soldiers flee out of the caves. They are met with squads of allies and surrender. Also found in the game files are references to two cut missions, known internally as Burr 1B and Oki 1. Burr 1B has very little information except for a sequence where the player would fight to a train station. The player would board the train with their fellow soldiers to get to Berlin. This sequence was reused at the end of the mission Blood and Iron. Oki 1 would take place before Blowtorch and Corkscrew, which is named internally as Oki 1. Other than this, very little is left over, suggesting most files were removed or simply never made. Saving the best for last, many files pertaining to a set of campaign missions where the player would take the role of a British soldier on the Western Front can be found in the mod tools. These begin with Hole 1, 2, and 3, and end with Rye 1, 2, and 3. The player would fight winterized German paratroopers who have unique models not seen anywhere else in the game. HOL 1 would begin with the player traveling through German territory in a German vehicle with a squad comprising of Sergeant Maddock, Private Goddard, as well as a few other friendlies disguised in German uniforms. When stopping at a checkpoint, Maddock would show the Germans fake documents, which they would see through and sound an alarm. Sergeant Maddock would be captured in the chaos, but the rest of the squad would make it out safely. Following this, the player and the remaining squad members would escape and regroup, where they would again try to deceive the Germans by pretending to take squad mates in regular uniforms as POWs. Once they made entrance into the camp, the squad would attack and sabotage it, presumably rescuing Sergeant Maddock in the process. This GSC file is relatively advanced, having small pre-planned dialogue within it, but the rest of them are pretty bare bones. HOL 2 would have the squad go through multiple objectives to save a bridge from being destroyed. The squad would start by ambushing a German convoy before descending on a bridge to find it being primed for demolition by German army engineers. Once the player kills the engineers and disarms the bombs, they are instructed to locate and destroy 2 Tiger tanks. Upon completion, a final battle would commence, where the squad would defend the bridge from a German counterattack. HOL 3 would be the final mission with the HOL prefix. The mission would start covertly as the player would be sneaking into a town with their comrades and assault a large mansion containing POWs. Once the POWs were rescued and the mansion cleared, there would be a fight in the town square. RHI-1 doesn't have too much associated with it, but the GSC file states it would include the player eliminating German patrols, clearing mortar teams, and assaulting a factory. RHI-2 involves the player clearing a cave of German soldiers, killing, quote, rocket guys, securing both a town and a bridge, and would finish with the player disabling a Nashorn mobile artillery unit. The British campaign would end with RHI-3. This is the most fleshed out of the missions, introducing a new character named Sergeant Wilkins, as well as clearly showing all of the objectives of the mission, which are enter and secure dock, enter and secure sub pen, blow up sub, go to flak, plant 3 charges and escape. The GSC file also notes a piece of interactivity within the world in the form of a shipping crate attached to a damaged crane. If the player were to shoot at a specific part of the crane, it would drop the shipping container onto a boat in the harbor if it hasn't already been sunk. This isn't the only cut content with the British campaign, although I'll cover the rest later. That about covers all the cut missions. Thanks for joining me in this video, and I'll see you in the next one.